Famous polyglot told Waitress's son to translate a rare language. Unaware vampire king was watching. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The night at the upscale restaurant was like any other, filled with the hum of clinking glasses and soft laughter. But for one waitress, this evening would mark a change that would alter her life forever. Sarah had worked at this fine dining establishment for the past 2 years, serving drinks, clearing plates, and doing everything in between to make ends meet. She was no stranger to the high-end clientele, but tonight was different. Among the guests was an unusual figure, a well-known polyglot, renowned for his fluency in over 20 languages. The man was seated at a private table, surrounded by his entourage, his piercing eyes scanning the room. Sarah had heard whispers about his remarkable ability to speak in virtually any language, a talent that had earned him fame worldwide. But she had no idea that this night would be the beginning of an unforgettable encounter. As she approached his table, Sarah nervously adjusted the tray of drinks she was carrying. The polyglot looked up at her with a smile that sent a shiver down her spine. "You must be the waitress," he said in flawless English, though his accent hinted at many other languages. Sarah nodded, trying her best to remain composed. "Yes, sir. How can I assist you tonight?" The polyglot's smile widened, and he motioned to a small, antique book on the table. "I need a translation," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "This is a rare language, one that has been lost for centuries. I believe you'll be able to help me." Sarah was taken aback. She had always been fluent in English and Spanish, but this request was far beyond her skill. "I'm afraid I don't know any rare languages, sir," she said, feeling a bit embarrassed. The polyglot leaned in closer, his eyes glinting with interest. "Not you," he said, gesturing toward Sarah's young son, who had come along to the restaurant that evening. Sarah had brought her son, Jack, to work that day because she couldn't afford a babysitter. Jack, a quiet 10-year-old, had always been an observant child with a natural talent for languages. He had often picked up phrases from TV shows and books without anyone teaching him. Sarah had no idea, however, that Jack's talent ran much deeper. The polyglot turned to Jack and asked, "Can you read this?" Jack, hesitant but intrigued, glanced at the book. It was a strange script, with flowing symbols that seemed both familiar and foreign. To Sarah's surprise, Jack stepped forward and began to translate the text aloud, his voice steady and clear. As he spoke, Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The words Jack was translating weren't just ordinary words. They were ancient, full of power and mystery. Unbeknownst to them both, a shadowy figure stood in the corner of the room, watching intently. The vampire king, who had been quietly observing from the shadows, recognized the language immediately. He had been searching for someone who could decipher these ancient words for years, but he had never expected it to be a young boy in a restaurant. The vampire king's interest piqued, and he watched as Jack's words filled the room with an eerie energy. This was the beginning of something far greater than anyone could have anticipated, and neither Sarah nor Jack could have known the true significance of what had just begun. The room fell silent as Jack's voice echoed through the restaurant, translating the ancient language with an ease that stunned everyone around him. Sarah, standing at the edge of the table, watched in disbelief as her son spoke words she had never heard before, words that carried an almost magical weight. The polyglot leaned forward, his eyes wide with astonishment. "I've been searching for years to find someone who can translate this," he murmured, as though in a trance. But Jack continued, unaware of the gravity of the situation. He was simply reading the words from the book, his young mind processing the strange symbols like they were second nature. His voice grew more confident as he translated a passage about a curse, a lost kingdom, and an ancient power hidden for centuries. As Jack spoke, the very air in the room seemed to shift. The temperature dropped slightly, and a chill ran down Sarah's spine. She turned to look at the figure standing in the corner of the room, the one who had been watching them from the shadows. She hadn't noticed him before, but now his presence was undeniable. His eyes, glowing faintly amber, locked onto Jack, a flicker of recognition in them. Sarah felt a cold shiver run through her. Something about him was off. But before she could say anything, the polyglot reached across the table, his hand trembling as he placed it gently on Jack's arm. "What is your name, boy?" he asked, his voice low and urgent. Jack hesitated, glancing at his mother. Sarah gave him a reassuring nod, though she too was unsure of what was happening. "Jack," the boy said softly. "Jack Harris." The polyglot's eyes widened even further, and he leaned back in his chair, as though trying to process what he had just heard. "Jack Harris," he repeated, almost to himself. "It cannot be." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She could feel the tension rising in the air, thick with something unspoken, something dangerous. The Vampire King, still watching from the corner, stepped forward, his movements fluid and silent, like a predator closing in on its prey. Sarah instinctively stepped in front of her son, her protective instincts kicking in. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shaking but resolute. The man didn't respond immediately. He simply stood there, his amber eyes never leaving Jack, as though trying to decide whether to approach them or not. Finally, he spoke. "I am Lucian Voss, the Vampire King." His voice was smooth, almost too smooth, and it carried a weight that Sarah felt in her bones. "And your son," Lucian continued, "has just unlocked something that has been hidden for centuries." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucian's gaze flickered to her, then back to Jack. "The language he spoke," Lucian said, his voice colder now, "is the key to a curse that has bound me for centuries. And now, it seems, Jack is the one who can break it." Sarah's mind raced. What was he talking about? A curse? And why was her son involved? Jack looked up at her, his wide eyes filled with confusion. "Mom, what's happening?" he asked, his voice trembling. Sarah didn't have an answer. She had no idea what was going on, but she knew one thing for certain. They were in danger. Lucian took a step closer, his eyes never leaving Jack. "Your son holds the power to break the curse," Lucian said. "But it comes at a price." The polyglot, who had been sitting quietly for some time, now spoke up. "What do you mean, a price?" he asked, his voice shaky. Lucian turned his gaze toward the polyglot, his expression hardening. "The price is the boy's life," Lucian said, his words sending a chill through the room. "Or something even more precious." Sarah's heart raced. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice rising with fear. "Jack is just a child." Lucian's eyes softened for a moment, though his voice remained cold. "He is no ordinary child," he said. "And now that he has unlocked the language, he is tied to this curse. There is no going back." Sarah stepped forward, positioning herself protectively in front of Jack. "We don't want any part of this," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. Lucian regarded her silently for a long moment before speaking again. "You don't have a choice," he said softly. "The curse has already begun to unravel, and Jack is the key to either its destruction or its continuation." Sarah's mind spun. She was in a nightmare, and she didn't know how to wake up from it. All she knew was that her son was in danger, and she would do anything to protect him. Lucian took another step forward, his expression unreadable. "You are already involved," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And there's no turning back." The silence in the room was suffocating. Sarah stood frozen in front of her son, trying to process the weight of Lucian's words. "There is no going back," he had said. And in that moment, Sarah realized the terrifying truth. Her son was entangled in something far bigger than any of them could have imagined. The power that Jack had unwittingly unleashed with his translation was now something they could not escape from. Jack, still confused, tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mom, what's happening? Why is he saying all this?" His voice was laced with fear, and it broke Sarah's heart. She glanced at Lucian, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and desperation. "What do you want from us?" she demanded, her voice shaking. Lucian studied her with a cold, calculating gaze. His amber eyes flickered to Jack, then back to her. "I want nothing from you," he said slowly, "but Jack's involvement in this is inevitable. The curse was never meant to be broken. It has waited for centuries for the right person to unlock it. Your son has become that person." Sarah felt her legs tremble beneath her. "So what now? You expect my son to just fix all of this?" Lucian's expression softened ever so slightly. "It's not about fixing it," he said. It's about whether he will destroy it or unleash something far worse. Sarah's mind raced. Destroy it? What was he talking about? She didn't understand any of this. But one thing was certain, Jack's life, their lives, were now part of something much darker. The polyglot, who had been silent up until this point, suddenly spoke up. What exactly does the curse do? What happens if it's not stopped? Lucian looked at the polyglot, his eyes narrowing. The curse is not just a spell or a simple enchantment. It binds the souls of the vampire royals, keeping them trapped in a cycle of death and rebirth. Only the one who unlocks the language can break it, if they choose to. But breaking it comes with a price. He turned back to Sarah and Jack. That price is death. The words sent a chill down Sarah's spine. She wanted to deny it, to reject everything Lucian was saying, but she could see the cold truth in his eyes. Jack had unknowingly become the key to breaking the curse, but if he did, it would cost him his life. Or worse. You're lying, Sarah whispered, the words barely escaping her lips. Lucian shook his head, his gaze unwavering. I do not lie. You have no idea what this curse has done to my people, to my kingdom. It has been an endless cycle of torment, of suffering. But your son's words have given us a chance to finally break free. That is why I must ask him to choose. Jack's eyes widened as he looked between Lucian and his mother. What do you mean, choose? He asked, his voice trembling. Lucian's gaze softened ever so slightly as he spoke. You have the power to end this curse, Jack. You are the key to my kingdom's freedom, but breaking the curse requires a sacrifice. It is not something you can take lightly. The cost is steep. Sarah stepped in front of Jack, her heart racing. I won't let you use him, she said, her voice fierce. I won't let you manipulate my son into doing something so dangerous. Lucian's expression hardened again, his voice low and almost predatory. You have no choice. The curse will not wait. If Jack does not choose to break it, it will consume him and everyone he loves. That is the price of inaction. Sarah felt her knees go weak. She had never felt so powerless. She had spent her entire life protecting her son, doing everything she could to ensure his safety. But now, standing in front of a vampire king, she realized that nothing she had done could prepare her for this. Jack looked up at her, his small face filled with fear. Mom, what should I do? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah looked at him, her heart breaking. She didn't have an answer. How could she possibly give him an answer to this? But she knew one thing for certain. She would not let him face this alone. She had to protect him, no matter the cost. Lucian stepped back, giving them a moment of silence. The tension in the air was thick, like a storm about to break. The choice is yours, Jack, Lucian said, his voice soft but commanding. You are the one who holds the power. But remember, the price is death. If you choose to break the curse, your life will be forfeit. If you choose not to, you will be forever tied to it. Jack swallowed hard, looking down at his hands as if trying to make sense of everything. Sarah reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice gentle but firm. You don't have to do this, she said, her eyes filled with love and fear. We'll find another way. But deep down, Sarah knew that the choice was no longer hers to make. Jack had become part of something far bigger than either of them. And now, he would have to decide how it would all end. The room was thick with tension as Jack stood there, struggling to comprehend the weight of Lucian's words. His heart raced, his palms felt clammy, and he could barely breathe as the vampire king's eyes bore into him. The choice was his, but what did that even mean? Jack had always been a quiet kid, content to stay out of the limelight, to blend into the background. He had never asked for this, never imagined his life would turn into something so unreal. Sarah stood beside him, her protective arm around his shoulders, but even she couldn't hide the fear that had crept into her voice. You don't have to do this, Jack, she said, her words trembling. We'll figure something out. There has to be another way. But Jack wasn't sure there was. Lucian had made it clear. There was no escape from this curse, no way out without a heavy price. If Jack chose to break the curse, he would lose his life. If he didn't, the curse would continue to torment not just him, but everyone around him. Jack's mind was in turmoil. How could he make such a life-or-death decision, especially when everything seemed to be spiraling out of control? The very idea that a few words from him could change everything was almost too much to bear. He looked up at Lucian, who was still watching him with those haunting amber eyes. The vampire king seemed calm, but there was something in his expression that Jack couldn't quite place. Was it pity? Or maybe guilt? "You're not alone in this," Lucian said, his voice softer now, as if trying to reassure him. "I've been waiting for this moment for centuries. The curse can only be broken by one with the power to decipher the language. And that power lies with you, Jack." Jack's thoughts raced. What if he made the wrong choice? What if there was no going back once the curse was broken? He glanced at his mother, searching her face for any sign of guidance, but all he saw was the same fear he felt. She had no answers. Jack knew deep down that this was his burden to bear. No one else could make this decision for him. "I don't understand," Jack whispered, his voice barely audible. "Why me? Why not someone else?" Lucian took a step forward, his figure looming over them. "Because you are the one chosen," he replied. "You unlocked the language, you unlocked the curse. Only you can choose whether it is destroyed or whether it continues." Jack's head was spinning. He felt trapped, like a fly caught in a web, with no way to escape. The room seemed to close in on him, and for a moment, it was hard to breathe. Everything felt surreal. "There must be another way," Sarah said again, her voice rising with desperation. She turned to Lucian, her eyes filled with fury. "You can't just expect him to make this choice. He's just a child." Lucian's gaze softened, but only for a moment. "He is not a child anymore," he said quietly. "He is the key to everything. You cannot protect him from what is coming." Jack's mind was racing. He wanted to run, to escape from this nightmare, but he knew he couldn't. The curse, the power, it was all part of him now, whether he liked it or not. The polyglot, who had been silently observing the conversation, suddenly stood up, his voice cutting through the tense air. "Lucian is right," he said. "There is no escaping the truth. The curse is tied to Jack, and no one else can break it. If he does nothing, the consequences will be worse than anything you can imagine." Jack swallowed hard, trying to process everything he had just heard. His world was spinning, and he felt completely alone, even with his mother standing beside him. He had always been the quiet one, the observer. Now, he was thrust into a situation that demanded strength, courage, and the ability to make an impossible decision. Lucian's eyes never left Jack as he spoke again. "You may feel powerless now, Jack, but you are not. You hold the power to change everything. But it will cost you." Jack closed his eyes, trying to block out the overwhelming pressure. How could he bear the weight of such a decision? He had never been trained for this. He had never been told that his destiny was tied to a curse that could either save or destroy an entire kingdom. "I don't want to die," Jack whispered, the fear in his voice unmistakable. Lucian's gaze softened, though his words were still hard. "No one wants to die, Jack. But the question isn't about wanting to. It's about whether you are willing to sacrifice yourself for the greater good." Jack opened his eyes, looking at his mother. She was terrified, but her face held a quiet strength. Sarah had always been his protector, his anchor in a world that often felt too big and too frightening. But now, it was up to him to protect her, to protect them both. Jack looked back at Lucian, his mind made up. "What happens if I break the curse?" he asked, his voice shaking but firm. Lucian studied him for a long moment before answering. "If you break the curse, the vampire royal bloodline will be freed from their torment, but it will come at a cost. It will either be your life or something else more precious." Jack swallowed hard. His hands were cold, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the moment he had to decide. "And if I don't break it?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "If you don't break it, the curse will continue, and it will consume you and everything you love." Jack's heart thundered in his chest as he stood there, his mind swirling with the weight of the decision before him. Lucian's words echoed in his ears, each one a reminder of the impossible choice that lay ahead. The curse could either be broken or it could consume him. There was no middle ground. Jack looked at his mother, Sarah, her face pale, her eyes filled with both love and fear. She had always been his protector, the one person who had always kept him safe, no matter what. But now, he realized, he was the one who needed to make this choice. Not just for himself, but for her, too. "I can't do this," Jack whispered, his voice shaking. "I don't want to die." Sarah reached out, her hands trembling as she gently cupped his face. "You don't have to make this choice alone, Jack," she said softly. "We will find a way through this. I won't let you face this alone." But as she spoke, Jack knew deep down that this wasn't something they could run from. The curse was already unfolding, its darkness creeping into their lives. And if he didn't act now, the consequences would be far worse than anything he could imagine. Lucian watched them silently, his gaze never leaving Jack. He seemed to be waiting, as if giving Jack time to make up his mind. "I understand your fear," Lucian said, his voice softer now. "But fear is not a luxury you can afford. The curse has already claimed so many lives. And now, it's your choice to stop it, or let it continue." Jack's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He didn't know what to do. How could he make such a huge decision? He was just a kid. He never asked for any of this. "What happens if I choose to break it?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lucian's expression darkened, his eyes flickering with something Jack couldn't quite place. "If you break the curse, the vampire bloodline will be freed from its chains. But that freedom comes at a cost." Jack's stomach tightened. He could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him, the enormity of the decision threatening to crush him. "And if I choose not to?" he asked, his voice cracking. Lucian's gaze hardened again. "If you don't break the curse, the darkness will continue to spread. It will consume you, and it will take everyone you love with it. There is no escaping it." Jack turned away, pacing the room in frustration. He felt trapped, suffocated by the impossible choice before him. He didn't want to be part of any curse, and he certainly didn't want to die. But how could he live with the consequences if he did nothing? "Mom," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. "What should I do? I don't know what to choose." Sarah took a deep breath and walked over to him, wrapping her arms around him in a tight hug. "I wish I could make this decision for you," she whispered. "But I can't. All I can do is tell you that I love you. And whatever you choose, we will face it together." Jack hugged her back, his mind still racing. He could feel his heart beating in his chest, a constant reminder of the life he had and the life he might lose. He wished there was another way. But deep down, he knew there wasn't. "I don't want anyone else to get hurt," Jack said, his voice barely audible. "I don't want to be the one to stop this, but I also don't want to let it keep going. I can't let it destroy everything." Sarah pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes with tears in her own. "You are stronger than you think," she said. "You have the power to change everything. But you don't have to do it alone." Lucian stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he watched them. "Time is running out," he said. "The curse will not wait much longer. Jack, you must decide." Jack swallowed hard, trying to push down the rising panic in his chest. He couldn't do this. Not alone. But his mother was right. He wasn't alone. He had her. He had the strength she had always given him, the love she had always shown him. Jack took a deep breath, his fingers trembling as he wiped the tears from his eyes. He looked at Lucian, then back at his mother, and made his decision. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steady, though his heart was still racing. "I'll break the curse." Lucian's eyes flashed with a hint of approval, though his expression remained cold. "It is a difficult choice," he said, "but it is the right one." Jack felt a strange calm settle over him. It wasn't a calm of certainty, but a calm that came with accepting that there was no going back. He had made his choice, and now he had to live with it. But whatever happened next, Jack knew one thing for sure. He wouldn't face it alone. His mother would be there with him, every step of the way. And together, they would face whatever darkness awaited them. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he stood before Lucian, his decision now made. Yet the weight of it was almost unbearable. He had chosen to break the curse, to take on a responsibility far beyond anything he could have ever imagined. But the moment the words left his mouth, he knew there was no turning back. Lucian's gaze was intense, his amber eyes locking onto Jack with a mix of approval and something darker. The Vampire King had been waiting for this moment for centuries, but for Jack, it felt like a terrifying leap into the unknown. Sarah, still by his side, squeezed his hand tightly, her fingers trembling. She had always been the one to keep him safe, but now, it was her son who had to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Are you sure?" she asked softly, her voice shaking with concern. Jack nodded, though inside, he wasn't sure of anything anymore. "I have to do this," he whispered. "I can't let it continue. I won't let it destroy everything we have." Lucian watched them, his expression unreadable. For a moment, everything was still, the tension thick in the air. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he stepped forward. "The curse is not something to be taken lightly," Lucian said, his voice low and commanding. "If you truly want to break it, you must come with me. There is no other way." Jack hesitated, glancing at his mother. She gave him a small nod, the faintest trace of trust in her eyes, and though she was terrified, she knew there was no other choice. The curse had already begun to consume their lives. It had to end. "What happens next?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lucian's gaze softened for a moment. "The curse will be lifted only if you perform the ritual correctly. But there is one thing you must understand. Breaking the curse will not come without consequences. It will take something from you. Something precious." Sarah's heart sank. "What do you mean? What will it take from him?" Lucian did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned, beckoning for them to follow him. "Come with me, and you will understand." Jack and Sarah exchanged a look, the uncertainty hanging between them like a heavy fog. They had no choice but to follow Lucian. They walked in silence, the halls of the ancient castle stretching before them, dark and foreboding. As they entered a grand chamber, the walls lined with arcane symbols and ancient artifacts, Jack felt a cold chill seep into his bones. This was the heart of the curse, the place where it had all begun centuries ago. "This is where the ritual must take place," Lucian said, his voice echoing in the vast room. He gestured to a large stone altar in the center of the room. "The words your son spoke are the key to unlocking the curse. But now, Jack, you must speak them again. And this time, you must choose to either bind the curse forever or destroy it completely." Jack's heart raced as he stared at the altar. The weight of the decision was crushing. If he chose to destroy the curse, it would mean the end of the vampire royal bloodline. But if he chose to bind it, the curse would continue, passing down through the generations. "I don't want anyone else to suffer," Jack whispered, his voice shaking. "But I don't know if I can do this. What if I make the wrong choice?" Lucian's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, Jack saw a flicker of something human in the vampire king's gaze. "There is no right or wrong choice, Jack. There is only the choice you make. The consequences will follow, but there is no escaping what must be done." Sarah stepped forward, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder. "We'll do this together," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "You don't have to face this alone." Jack looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. She had always been there for him, always fought for him, and now it was his turn to fight for them both. With a deep breath, he turned to Lucian. "I'll do it. I'll break the curse." Lucian nodded, a hint of approval in his eyes. "Very well." He gestured for Jack to step closer to the altar. "The words you spoke before were only the beginning. Now, you must speak them once more. But this time, you must make your choice clear. If you choose to destroy the curse, you must sever the connection between the vampire royals and the power that binds them. It will end their torment, but will come at a great cost." Jack nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. This was it. The moment that would decide the fate of so many lives, including his own. He took a step forward, the weight of the room pressing down on him. "I choose to destroy the curse," Jack said, his voice firm. "I won't let it continue." Lucian stepped back, his face impassive. "Then it will be done." With that, the room seemed to shift. The air grew thick, the temperature dropping sharply as Jack spoke the words once more, the ancient language flowing from his lips. As the final syllable left his mouth, the ground beneath them trembled. Jack's body was flooded with a surge of energy, and for a moment, he thought he might collapse. But then, everything stopped. The room was silent. Jack opened his eyes and looked around, but nothing had changed. Or so it seemed. Lucian's face was unreadable, but the slightest flicker in his eyes suggested something had shifted. "It is done," Lucian said quietly. "The curse is broken." The air in the chamber was still, suffocatingly so, as Jack stood at the altar, the weight of his decision pressing heavily on him. The curse had been broken, but with it, something had changed, something that was yet to reveal itself. Lucian stood by, his amber eyes watching Jack closely, his face an unreadable mask. Sarah, still at Jack's side, was silent, her gaze flicking nervously between her son and the vampire king. The energy in the room felt different now, darker, heavier, but also lighter in a strange way, as though the curse had lifted only to reveal something more dangerous lurking beneath the surface. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as the final words of the ritual echoed in his mind. He had done it. The curse was broken. But in that moment, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Lucian's voice broke the silence, low and commanding. "It is done," he said. "The curse is no more." Jack didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. He had hoped for an end, a clear resolution, but instead, a hollow emptiness filled the space where the curse once was. "Now what?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lucian took a step forward, his gaze never leaving Jack. "Now, you must understand the price of your choice. The curse is broken, but the magic has not disappeared. It has been transferred." Jack frowned, confusion clouding his thoughts. "Transferred? What do you mean?" Lucian's eyes narrowed, his expression hardening. "The power that bound the vampire royal bloodline is gone, yes, but it has to go somewhere. It has been shifted, and now the balance must be maintained." Jack's breath caught in his throat. "You mean, the power has transferred to me?" Lucian gave a slight nod. "Yes, you broke the curse, but in doing so, you have inherited the very magic that once bound the vampire bloodline." Jack felt the world shift beneath him. His stomach turned, and for a moment, the room seemed to spin. "What does that mean for me?" Jack asked, his voice shaking with fear. Lucian's lips curled into a faint, almost sad smile. "It means you now hold the power of the curse. The magic that controlled the vampires for centuries is now yours to wield." Jack felt a cold sweat break out on his skin. "But I don't want that power. I didn't ask for it." Lucian's gaze softened, though his expression remained serious. "No one asks for power, Jack. But sometimes it chooses you." Sarah stepped forward, her hand reaching out to Jack. "This isn't fair," she said, her voice filled with frustration. "You've done what was asked of you. Why is this happening to him?" Lucian turned to Sarah, his amber eyes flickering with something that resembled pity. "Because the magic must reside somewhere. The curse needed to be broken, and in the process, the energy was released. Jack's words did that. He is now the one who controls the power, whether he accepts it or not." Jack felt his knees weaken as the reality of the situation settled in. He had broken the curse, but in doing so, had he just signed up for a future he couldn't escape? "So what happens now?" Jack asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Lucian studied him for a long moment before responding. "Now, you must choose once again. The power you hold can either destroy you or empower you, but you cannot walk away from it." The weight of Lucian's words hung in the air, and Jack's heart sank. "What do you mean by destroy me?" Jack asked, barely able to breathe. Lucian didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked toward the altar, his fingers brushing over the stone surface. "The magic of the curse is tied to the bloodline," he said slowly. "With it comes great responsibility, Jack. If you allow the power to control you, it will consume you. But if you can master it, you may control it in return." Jack clenched his fists. He didn't want this. He didn't want to be part of this twisted world of power, curses, and vampires. But he had no choice. He was already in too deep. "How do I control it?" Jack asked, his voice low, almost a plea. Lucian turned to him, his face serious. "You must learn to understand the magic within you. It is not something that can be tamed easily. It requires discipline, focus, and the ability to withstand the temptation to use it." Jack swallowed hard. The weight of it all felt like it might break him. The power of the curse now coursing through his veins was something he could never have imagined. But it was his, and there was no running from it. "How do I start?" Jack asked, looking at Lucian with a mixture of fear and determination. Lucian's lips twitched, as if pleased with Jack's resolve. "First, you must understand that the power you hold is not just magic. It is a part of the vampire legacy, a curse that has been passed down through generations. The first step is to accept it." Jack's stomach twisted. "I don't want to accept it. I just want to go home." Lucian's expression darkened. "You can never go back to the way things were, Jack. The moment you spoke the words to break the curse, you sealed your fate. You cannot undo what has been done." Jack's thoughts raced. The curse was broken, but the price was higher than he could have ever imagined. He had no choice but to face it. And as the weight of the decision settled on him, Jack realized that this was his new reality. There was no escape. The power he had unlocked would shape his life from here on out. The weight of the power coursing through Jack's veins felt overwhelming. His heart thudded with each breath, and for a moment, he wondered if he might collapse under the pressure. The words Lucian had spoken were still fresh in his mind. You cannot undo what has been done. There was no going back, no simple escape from the world that had just swallowed him whole. Jack looked at his mother, her face filled with worry, yet there was something else in her eyes too, resilience. She had always been his rock, the one person who had never wavered, no matter the challenges. But now, for the first time, Jack saw that she was uncertain too. He could feel her fear, her concern for him, as if it were a tangible thing in the air around them. Sarah stepped closer to Jack, her hand on his arm. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, though the question seemed almost futile. Jack didn't know how to answer. How could he say he was okay when everything in his life had changed in an instant? He had the power now, the very power that had once been tied to the vampire bloodline, a power that could either save or destroy, and he had no idea how to control it. "I don't know what to do, Mom," Jack admitted, his voice breaking slightly. "I feel like I'm losing myself." Sarah's expression softened, and she reached up to touch his face, her hand warm against his cold skin. "You're not losing yourself, Jack. You're just different. You have the power to change things, to make things right. But you don't have to do it alone." Jack nodded, though he didn't feel reassured. The weight of the responsibility pressing down on him was suffocating. Lucian had made it clear that the curse was gone, but the power had been transferred to him. He was now the keeper of the magic, the very force that had shaped the fate of the vampires for centuries. And with that power came a price. "I didn't ask for this," Jack muttered under his breath, looking down at his hands as though they were alien to him. His fingers tingled, as though the magic was trying to escape, to reveal itself in ways Jack wasn't prepared for. Lucian, still standing in the shadows, watched him intently. Jack's eyes flicked toward him, a mix of anger and fear in his gaze. "What do you expect me to do now?" he demanded. Lucian didn't move, his voice calm and controlled. "You must learn to control it, Jack. The power inside you is not just a curse, it is also a tool. It can either destroy you or empower you. But it will not be easy." Jack clenched his fists at his sides. He was so tired of hearing those words. "I don't want it. I don't want any part of this." Lucian's gaze remained unwavering, almost pitying. "I know you don't want this, Jack. No one does. But the moment you spoke the words to break the curse, you sealed your fate. The magic chose you." Jack took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. "What do I need to do?" he asked, his voice steadier now. Lucian finally stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate. "First, you must accept that you cannot change what has happened. You have broken the curse, and now you must learn to control the magic within you. But it will take time. And patience." Jack swallowed hard, trying to process everything. It felt like everything he had ever known had been upended. His life would never be the same again. "How do I even start?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lucian studied him for a moment before answering. "You must learn to harness the power. Control it, or it will control you." Sarah's hand tightened on Jack's arm, her grip a silent reassurance. Jack didn't know how to begin. He felt lost in this strange new world, his mind reeling from everything that had happened. But one thing was clear. He couldn't keep running from the power inside him. He had to face it, whether he wanted to or not. Lucian turned and walked toward the far wall of the chamber, his hands moving over the ancient symbols etched into the stone. "You must learn to focus the magic," he said, his voice distant. "It is not about suppressing it, but guiding it. It will take time and discipline, but you can do it." Jack nodded, though the uncertainty still gnawed at him. "Will I ever be able to go back to my normal life?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. Lucian paused, his back still turned to them. "Normal life?" he repeated softly. "Once you've broken the curse, there is no returning to the life you once knew. You are now bound to this power, and you will face the consequences, whether you're ready or not." Jack's stomach twisted at Lucian's words. He had been so desperate for this curse to end, for his life to return to normal. But now, he realized that normal was a thing of the past. The power he held would forever change him. "What happens if I can't control it?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lucian turned to face him, his expression unreadable. "Then the power will consume you," he said, his voice cold. "And you will become a part of the curse you tried to destroy." Jack took a step back, his body trembling. He had no idea how he was supposed to control this power, how he was supposed to become something he wasn't. "I don't know if I can do this," Jack whispered, his voice breaking. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." Lucian's eyes softened slightly, but his voice remained firm. You are stronger than you think, Jack. The power is already inside you. You just need to learn how to wield it. Jack stood frozen in the center of the chamber, the weight of Lucian's words still hanging heavily in the air. The power coursing through him felt like an alien force, something he had never asked for, never imagined. He was just a boy, a regular kid, but now he held the magic that had once bound the vampire bloodline. It was a responsibility that felt as though it would crush him. He glanced at his mother, Sarah, her eyes filled with concern and love. She had always been there for him, had always protected him. But now, it was Jack's turn to face the unknown. He had to learn to control the magic, or it would control him. The thought terrified him. I don't know where to start, Jack admitted, his voice shaky as he turned toward Lucian. How do I even begin to understand this? What if I can't control it? Lucian, standing silently across the room, regarded him with an unreadable expression. The first step is to accept it, Lucian said quietly. You cannot fight it, Jack. You must embrace it. It is part of you now, and you must learn to wield it, or it will destroy you. Jack swallowed hard. The idea of accepting this power, of embracing it, felt wrong. It wasn't a part of him. It was a burden he didn't ask for. But as much as he wanted to reject it, Jack knew he had no choice. If he didn't take control of the power inside him, it would only consume him. And the curse that had tormented the vampire bloodline for centuries would continue, spreading its darkness to others. What happens if I can't do it? Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lucian's amber eyes flickered with a hint of something. Regret, perhaps, or maybe something darker. Then the power will take over, he replied, his tone chilling. And you will become a puppet to it, just like those who came before you. Jack shuddered, the weight of the decision sinking in. There was no turning back now. How do I learn to control it? Jack asked, his voice filled with determination, despite the fear still clawing at him. Lucian's gaze softened, but only slightly. You must begin by focusing. The magic is volatile. It reacts to your emotions, to your thoughts. You must learn to center yourself, to calm the storm inside. Only then will you be able to control it. Jack nodded, trying to steady his breathing. The room seemed to close in around him, the air thick with tension. It felt like everything was pressing against him, threatening to crush him under the weight of it all. But he couldn't back down now. He had already made the choice to break the curse. Now, he had to live with it. How long will it take? Jack asked, his voice trembling. Lucian was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. There is no set time. Some never learn to control it, he said softly, while others learn quickly. It depends on your strength, your willpower. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean, some never learn? Lucian's eyes darkened. Those who fail to control the power are consumed by it. They lose themselves, their humanity, and become nothing more than vessels for the magic. Jack's stomach twisted at the thought. He didn't want to lose himself. He didn't want to become something else. What can I do to stop that from happening? He asked desperately. Lucian's eyes flickered with a rare hint of emotion. You must remain strong, Jack. You must never let the magic dictate your actions. Keep your mind clear, your heart steady. The moment you let fear, anger, or any other emotion take control, the magic will consume you. Jack nodded, though the words felt heavy on his chest. I'll try, he said, though he wasn't sure how much of that was true. The idea of controlling something so powerful, so dangerous, felt impossible. You don't have to do it alone, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the worry in her eyes. I'll be here. We'll figure this out together. Jack looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. His mother had always been there for him, and now, she would be by his side through this. Thanks, Mom, Jack whispered. I don't know what I'd do without you. Sarah smiled softly, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. You won't have to do it alone, she said. I'll be here every step of the way. Jack took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside him. He wasn't sure how long it would take to master this power, or even if he could. But he knew one thing. He had to try. For himself. For his mother. For the world that depended on him. Lucian's voice broke through. His thoughts. We begin now, he said. The first lesson is simple. Focus. Clear your mind, and feel the magic within you. Jack nodded, closing his eyes, trying to block out the noise of his thoughts, the fear, the doubt. He focused on his breathing, drawing in deep breaths, letting them out slowly. At first, nothing happened. The The magic inside him pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat just out of reach. But slowly, as Jack concentrated, he felt something stir within him. It was subtle at first, a small, flickering warmth deep inside his chest. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Good, Lucian said, his voice a little softer. Now keep it steady. Control it. Jack focused harder, trying to keep the warmth contained, not letting it slip away. The power inside him surged, pushing against the walls he was trying to build, but Jack held on. He wasn't going to let it win. Not now. Not ever. Jack's breathing steadied, and for the first time since this nightmare had begun, he felt a sliver of control. The magic was there, pulsing under his skin, and he could almost feel it moving like a current, both terrifying and exhilarating. He held his breath, focusing harder, trying to push back the overwhelming surge that was so close to breaking free. Lucian stood in the background, watching intently, his eyes narrowing as Jack struggled to keep the magic contained. Focus, Jack, Lucian's voice cut through the tension. The power is yours to control, but it will not be easy. You must master it, or it will master you. Jack didn't dare open his eyes. He had to keep going, had to make this work. His hands clenched into fists, and his whole body seemed to vibrate with the force of the magic pushing against him. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he struggled to find the balance between surrendering to the magic and controlling it. It felt like a war within him, a battle of wills. But there was something else. As he focused, as he let the power flow, Jack began to feel a strange connection, a sense of unity with it. It was as if the magic had always been a part of him, waiting for him to accept it, to recognize it. It wasn't just some external force, it was a part of his very being. Jack inhaled. Deeply, his breath shaky but determined. He could do this. He had to. For himself. For his mother. For everything he had left. His chest tightened as he concentrated harder, pushing back the swell of magic that wanted to overtake him. He felt the energy settle within him, like the calm after a storm, and slowly, the pulse of power faded into a steady hum beneath his skin. A sense of peace washed over him, though it was fragile. He knew it wouldn't last forever. But in that moment, he had done it. Jack slowly opened his eyes, and for the first time in what felt like ages, he saw clearly. The room around him was just as it had always been, dim, silent, but now, there was a quiet stillness inside of him, too. The magic was there, but it was no longer overwhelming. Well done, Lucian said, his voice cold but with a trace of approval. Jack nodded, though his limbs felt heavy, like the weight of the world was still pressing down on him. He was only beginning to understand the gravity of what had just happened. What now? Jack asked, his voice hoarse. Lucian's eyes flickered with something, almost like respect. Now, you begin to learn how to wield it. But understand this, Jack. This power is not just a gift, it is a curse. It will always be with you, always in you, and you must learn to control it before it controls you. Jack clenched his fists, the truth of Lucian's words sinking in. He had broken the curse, yes, but in doing so, he had inherited a darkness, a power that could destroy him if he wasn't careful. There was no turning back. I won't let it control me, Jack said, his voice firm, though the fear was still there, gnawing at the edges of his resolve. Lucian tilted his head, studying him. You will need more than willpower, Jack. You will need discipline. And you will need allies. Allies. The word struck Jack like a bolt of lightning. He had no idea who he could trust anymore. His life had become a web of lies and secrets, a world where nothing was certain, and no one could be relied upon. I don't know who I can trust, Jack admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Lucian's gaze softened, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. You can trust no one but yourself, Jack. That is the harsh truth of the world you now belong to. Jack felt the weight of Lucian's words settle on his shoulders. There was no one who could protect him from the power inside him. He was on his own now, and the only way out was through. What do I do now? Jack asked, his voice thick with uncertainty. Lucian's expression turned serious, his eyes dark with the weight of centuries of knowledge. You begin your training. The magic is volatile. It will test you, break you, and tempt you to use it for your own desires. But you must never give in. Control is the only thing that will keep you alive. Jack nodded, though his heart was still heavy. He had a long road ahead of him, and he didn't know where it would lead. All he knew was that he had no choice but to keep going. His mother, Sarah, stepped closer to him, her hand gently resting on his arm. Her touch was a reminder that he wasn't completely alone, even in the darkest moments. "We'll figure this out, together," she said softly, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Jack looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. She had always been there for him, always had his back. And now, more than ever, he needed her strength. Jack took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. "I won't fail," he whispered to himself, as much as to her. "I'll learn to control it. I have to." Lucian stepped forward, his voice low and deliberate. "The first lesson begins now, Jack. The magic within you will never be tamed unless you understand it. And that means facing your greatest fears." Jack's stomach churned. Fear. The one thing that had held him back. "What do you mean?" Jack asked, his voice trembling slightly. Lucian's eyes glinted with something dangerous, something ancient. "You will confront the magic head-on, Jack. You must face the fear that lurks inside you, or it will control you." The next few days felt like a blur. Jack spent hours trying to center himself, to harness the power that now resided within him. Lucian's words echoed in his mind. "You must face your greatest fears." But Jack didn't know where to start. Fear had always been a constant in his life, whether it was the fear of not being good enough, of losing his mother, or of the unknown. Now, that fear had manifested into something darker, more dangerous. He wasn't sure how to confront something like that. It was easier said than done. One evening, after a particularly grueling session with Lucian, Jack sat alone in his room, his mind racing. The power was still there, humming beneath his skin, like a constant reminder of his responsibility. It wasn't just the magic that scared him, it was the way it made him feel, like he was losing control. He couldn't even remember the last time he felt like himself. The world he knew was slipping away, and Jack wasn't sure if he was ready to accept the consequences. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had unlocked the curse, the same hands that now held the power to destroy or save. His fingers trembled as he clenched them into fists. "How did I get here?" he whispered to himself. Jack had always thought of himself as just a normal kid, someone who could fade into the background, avoid attention, and live a simple life. But that life was gone now. His future was tied to a magic he didn't understand, a curse he had broken only to become its new vessel. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Sarah's voice followed. "Jack, can we talk?" Jack sighed and stood, walking to the door. His mother stood in the hallway, her eyes filled with concern, but there was something else there too, strength. It was the same strength that had always guided him, the same strength that made him feel like, no matter what happened, he wasn't completely alone. "Of course, Mom. Come in." Sarah stepped inside, her gaze soft as she sat on the edge of Jack's bed. "How are you holding up?" she asked gently. Jack wanted to say he was fine, that he had everything under control, but the words caught in his throat. He couldn't lie to her, not when she could see right through him. "I don't know," Jack admitted, sitting next to her. "I'm trying, but I feel like I'm losing myself." Sarah reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "You're not losing yourself, Jack. I know this is hard, but you are still you. The power, the curse, it doesn't define who you are." Jack looked at her, the weight of everything pressing down on him. "But what if I can't control it? What if it controls me?" Sarah shook her head. "You won't let that happen. I believe in you." Jack smiled faintly, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I don't know if I believe in myself," he muttered. Sarah's expression softened, and she moved closer, wrapping her arm around him. "You don't have to do this alone, Jack. I'm here for you always. Whatever happens, we face it together." Jack's heart ached with the weight of her words. He had always known his mother would stand by him, but the reality of what he was facing felt too much for one person to bear. "I don't want you to get hurt, Mom. This power, it's dangerous." Sarah smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "We're all in this together, and I won't let anything happen to you, Jack. Not while I'm here." Jack closed his eyes, leaning into her embrace. For the first time in days, he felt a sense of calm. The magic, the curse, all the fear, it was still there, but for a brief moment, it felt manageable. "I'll do my best," Jack whispered. "I'll learn to control it." Sarah kissed the top of his head. "I know you will." But as Jack sat there in the quiet of the room, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something darker than anything he had faced so far. The power was growing inside him, and he could feel it, like a storm on the horizon, just waiting to break. The next day, Lucian arrived, as usual, with more lessons. But today, there was a different air about him, a seriousness in his eyes that unsettled Jack. Today, you will confront the fear that holds you back, Lucian said, his voice as cold as ever. The magic will test you, but you must face it. Jack nodded, though his stomach churned. What do I have to do? Lucian's eyes narrowed. You must face the darkness within you. The magic thrives on your emotions, on your fears. If you can face that fear, you can control it. Jack swallowed hard, fear tightening in his chest. He had to face the fear that had been following him since he first unlocked the curse. But what? If he wasn't strong enough? What if the fear consumed him, just like the magic had tried to? Lucian's voice interrupted his thoughts. Focus, Jack. You will face the fear that lurks within you. It will be difficult, but if you are to succeed, you must let go of your doubts. Jack closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. It was time to confront the thing he had been running from. He focused on the darkness inside him, the magic that surged whenever he let his emotions slip out of control. The fear was there, waiting to pounce, waiting to overtake him. But Jack wouldn't let it. Not this time. He was stronger than that. He had to be. Jack stood in the center of the room, his heart pounding in his chest. Lucian's voice echoed in his mind, pushing him forward, urging him to face the darkness within. The magic inside him was stronger now, more palpable, like a living, breathing thing. It had been hours since Lucian had told him to face his fear, but it felt like an eternity. Jack closed his eyes, breathing deeply, trying to center himself. He felt the pulse of power within him, thrumming beneath his skin. It was alive, like a fire just waiting to be unleashed. The fear, the doubt, everything he had been avoiding, came rushing to the surface. The darkness was there, lurking just out of sight. Jack could feel it in the pit of his stomach, a cold, empty feeling that threatened to swallow him whole. It was the fear of failure, the fear of becoming something he didn't want to be. But now, it was time to face it. Jack opened his eyes and stared into the emptiness before him. I'm not afraid of you, he whispered, though his voice trembled. The air around him seemed to grow heavier, as if the very room itself was responding to his words. He felt the magic surging inside him, reacting to his emotions. The power wanted to take over, to control him, to feed on his fear. But Jack wasn't going to let it. Not this time. I'm in control, he repeated, louder this time. I control you, not the other way around. The darkness seemed to pull back, but only for a moment. Then, it surged forward, swirling around him like a storm. Jack's heart raced, his body tensed, but he forced himself to stay grounded. He wasn't going to let it take him. Not now, not ever. The magic within him surged again, responding to his defiance. It was like a struggle, a battle of wills. Jack could feel the pressure building, the weight of the power threatening to crush him, but he pushed against it, refusing to give in. He focused on the center of himself, on the place where the magic resided, and slowly, with great effort, he forced it back. The storm calmed, the magic settling beneath his skin once more. Jack's breathing was heavy, but steady. He had done it. For the first time, he had controlled the magic. Lucian's voice broke the silence. Well done, he said, his tone unreadable. Jack turned to face him, his body still shaking from the effort. It wasn't easy, Jack admitted, his voice rough. But I did it. Lucian's amber eyes studied him intently. You have taken the first step, Jack. But this is only the beginning. The fear will always be there, lurking in the shadows. You must learn to face it again and again, or it will consume you. Jack nodded, though the weight of Lucian's words settled heavy on his shoulders. He had faced the darkness within him once, but he knew there would be many more battles to come. The fear would never fully disappear, and neither would the power that came with it. But Jack had learned something important that day. He was stronger than the fear. He could control the magic, not the other way around. He wasn't sure how he would do it, how he would keep going, but he knew that he had no choice. He had made his decision, and now he had to live with it. I'm ready, Jack said, his voice steady, though his heart was still racing. Lucian studied him for a long moment before nodding. Then we begin the next phase. You must learn to harness the magic fully, to use it as a tool, not just a force to be controlled. But remember, Jack, power is a double-edged sword. It can save you, or it can destroy you. It is all about how you choose to wield it. Jack's mind raced as he processed Lucian's words. He had just faced his fear, but he knew that was only the first hurdle. The real challenge would be learning to live with the power, learning to use it without being consumed by it. He wasn't sure he was ready, but he knew he had no choice. The curse had been broken, but in doing so, he had inherited the responsibility of controlling a power far greater than he could have imagined. And now, he had to learn how to wield it. Lucian turned and walked toward the far side of the room, motioning for Jack to follow. Come. The real training begins now. Jack hesitated for a moment, his body still exhausted from the struggle, but he knew there was no turning back. He followed Lucian, his mind focused on the path ahead. The fear, the doubt, they were still there, lurking in the back of his mind, but Jack was beginning to understand something important. He didn't have to let them control him. He could face them every day and still be strong. He wasn't going to let the magic consume him. He wasn't going to let the fear take over. He was ready to fight for control, for his future, for his freedom. And for the first time since all of this began, Jack felt a spark of hope. Maybe he could do this. Maybe he could control the power after all. The days that followed were a blur of training and struggle, each day blurring into the next as Jack fought to control the magic that had once terrified him. He spent hours each day with Lucian, learning to harness the power, to shape it into something he could use instead of something that used him. It was hard, harder than anything he had ever done before, but with every passing day, Jack felt the strength within him growing. He could feel the magic pulsing through his veins, no longer an uncontrollable force, but a tool he could wield. It was still dangerous, still volatile, but it was no longer the monster it had been when he first unlocked it. Jack had learned to embrace the darkness, not to fight it, and in doing so, he had gained mastery over it. It was a delicate balance, one that required constant vigilance. But he was no longer afraid. With each step forward, he grew more confident. But even as he made progress, Jack couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was still off. The magic was powerful, yes, but it was not the only force at play. There were still enemies out there, still threats lurking in the shadows, waiting for the moment when Jack's guard would be down. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lucian approached him, his expression serious. "You've made progress," he said, "but there is still much to be done. The true test of your strength is not in controlling the magic, but in using it to protect those you love." Jack nodded, the weight of Lucian's words sinking in. He had learned to control the power, but he hadn't yet faced the ultimate challenge, using it for good. Jack had spent so much time focusing on mastering the magic, he had neglected to consider how it could affect the world around him. He had the power to save lives, but he also had the power to destroy them. And that realization scared him more than anything else. "What do I do now?" Jack asked, his voice heavy with uncertainty. Lucian looked at him, his amber eyes piercing. "You must learn to protect yourself, Jack. The curse may be broken, but there are still those who would seek to use you, to exploit the power you now possess. You must be prepared for what's to come." Jack swallowed hard, the weight of his responsibility settling in. He had broken the curse, yes, but in doing so, he had stepped into a world that was far darker and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The power he had unlocked was a gift, but it was also a curse. And now, it was up to him to decide how he would use it. The choice was his, and that thought filled him with both dread and determination. "I'm ready," Jack said, though he didn't feel ready at all. Lucian nodded, his gaze steady. "You will never be completely ready. There will always be new challenges, new dangers. But you are stronger than you realize." Jack's heart raced. The pressure of it all was overwhelming. But as he looked at Lucian, something inside him shifted. He wasn't alone. He had his mother, he had Lucian, and he had himself. And that was enough. "I'll do whatever it takes," Jack said, his voice firm. Lucian gave a small smile. "Good. That's what I need to hear." And so, Jack's training continued, each day bringing new lessons, new trials. He learned to control the magic more fully, to use it for good, to protect the people he loved. But as time passed, Jack knew that the true test would come when he was faced with a choice, to use the power to save, or to use it to destroy. The power was always with him, always present, like a shadow that never left. But Jack was no longer afraid of it. He had faced his fears, confronted the darkness within himself, and come out stronger. And as he looked ahead, he knew that he was ready for whatever came next. Because in the end, Jack had learned the most important lesson of all. No matter how dark the path, the light of his own strength would always guide him forward. Vampire stories have captivated audiences for centuries, blending mystery, magic, and suspense. In this thrilling journey, we follow a young boy who unexpectedly inherits the powerful legacy of the vampire curse, a burden he never asked for. As he faces unimaginable challenges, he learns to control the dangerous magic coursing through his veins, discovering the true cost of wielding such power. This tale delves deep into the complexities of fear, self-doubt, and the struggle to master an ancient force. As the story unfolds, the boy's transformation from an ordinary teenager into a reluctant hero mirrors the classic themes found in the best vampire stories, where control over supernatural abilities can be both a gift and a curse. The magic that once bound the vampire bloodline now lies within him, but the real test will be whether he can resist the temptation to use it for destruction. With danger lurking around every corner, he must learn to navigate this treacherous path. This is not just a battle against external enemies, but an internal struggle to retain humanity while being consumed by the very darkness he is trying to defeat. The boy's journey is a testament to the power of choice, redemption, and the enduring appeal of vampire stories that explore the thin line between good and evil. As the boy's power grows, he faces the ultimate question that has defined countless vampire stories. Will he embrace the darkness or fight for the light? In the end, he must choose his destiny, and the decisions he makes will shape the future of those around him. This narrative explores the timeless appeal of vampire stories, where nothing is ever as it seems, and every action has consequences that ripple through the ages.